Right now you're looking at Ubuntu 26.04, and it is running GNOME. But there's clearly something very off about this. Not just the fact that it's not Ubuntu GNOME, but this is not any stock GNOME that you probably know. The overview function is entirely gone, but if we press Alt F2, we do get a basic launcher. But you might have also noticed up here, we have places we can go and click on, let's say desktop, and it'll open up the folder, and applications, and this is a list of the applications I have on my system. Obviously, if I was to go and install various other things, then it would go and populate that list. The top and bottom bar don't look anything like modern GNOME, let alone the fact that there is a bottom bar to begin with. That is definitely not there in vanilla GNOME. Then there's the fact that if I hold the Alt key and right-click on one of these bars on one of these panels, it opens up this menu. We can click on Add to Panel and then load in any of the modules that are available here. That works on the other bar as well. Also, we can add a new panel and then do the exact same thing to that. So let's say I want to go and add the the command one. It's a little buggy, but it does kind of work. It kind of sometimes bleeds off the side of the screen, but it is what it is. Anyway, from here, I can go and right-click on the panel, click Delete Panel, and then the panel is now gone. We are back to whatever this is. With this system, we're going to add these modules into the bar. This gives us a very modular, a very customizable system that is not something you would normally expect to see from GNOME, at least without installing just a bunch of additional extensions. And that's not what I'm doing here. That's not at all what this is. And strangest of all, if I open up a terminal and let's go and run Excise, my favorite way of checking if something is running X11 or Wayland. If this is Wayland, when I've moved my cursor, Excise is just not going to do anything. If I'm on X11, it's going to be able to see what my cursor is and then track it around the screen. And it's tracking it around the screen. If I'm focused on this window, it's still tracking it. If I don't know, were to open up, didn't mean to do that. If I were to open up another application, then the exact same thing would happen. It would keep tracking things because this is X11, which doesn't make any sense because on GNOME 50, they've finally dropped the X11 session support. So what is this? Before you say, well, this just isn't GNOME, it is still running GNOME Tech. If I open up my system settings here, this is the GNOME settings panel. This right here is a terminal for GNOME. I believe it's Ptixis and not the regular GNOME terminal, but that's just Ubuntu stuff. It's a normal terminal you use with GNOME. If I change to dark mode, the bar respects that. It behaves like it should. This is GNOME, but not the GNOME you know. If I go and run fast fetch, this will give us a bit more information on what we are looking at. DE, GNOME, but it's something called GNOME Flashback, and then the window manager, that's not Mutter Wayland. That's Metacity X11. So again, I raise the question, what are we looking at here? This isn't something like Cinnamon or Mate or one of these other environments that is built off of GNOME, but is very much a third-party thing. This is GNOME. Technically, this is GNOME Flashback. Now, some of you old-school Linux fans probably know exactly what this is, but you probably didn't realize that this was still around, and this was still being worked on, because I didn't have to finesse anything. I'm not running like a weird old version of Ubuntu. I'm not compiling old software and it kind of just barely works. This is something that is packaged in Ubuntu 26.04, and you can just install it. Just a single command and install GNOME Flashback. There's also a package in Arch Linux and various other places, but we're on Ubuntu today because I didn't feel like setting up Arch. Now, when I say this is technically GNOME, what I mean is this isn't in some random third-party repo. this is in the GNOME repos. Here's GNOME Flashback, here's Metacity, here are the GNOME applets, these little modules you can load into the panel. All of this is in the GNOME repos. But the readmes are not exactly very useful. Basically, for GNOME Flashback, we have the components in this, we have releases, we have discussion. This links literally just over to the GNOME discourse, not even a dedicated location on the GNOME discussion forum. The reporting bugs just links you over to the issue tracker, which you would be seeing because you're on the GitLab anyway. The Metacity one is basically just about compiling it and various features of the window manager. So if you want to use it and you want to know some of the other functionality it has, do go and check this out, because this is basically the only documentation on how to actually interact with Metacity anymore. And then GNOME Applet is basically just explaining how to use it and then releases, development, stuff like that. Let's instead go over to the now defunct GNOME Wiki. This looks a little bit different to what we are running here, because this has been around for a little bit. GNOME Flashback is a session for GNOME 3, which was initially called GNOME Fallback and shipped as a standalone session in Debian and Ubuntu. It provides a similar user experience to GNOME 2.x series sessions. The differences to the Mate project is that GNOME Flashback uses GTK plus 3 and tries to follow current GNOME development by integrating changes of the GNOME libraries. The development currently lags behind a little bit, but a lot of progress has been made, and most importantly, many bugs have been fixed. This is something that was created during the very turbulent transition between GNOME 2 and GNOME 3. This is a period where a lot of people felt like the direction of the project was changing. A lot of people fell off the project. This led to a lot of the GNOME forks we know today actually being created. And because of that, some people decided to come together and basically make something for GNOME 3 that acted more like GNOME 2. Now, obviously, it was still built on GNOME 3 at the time, so it was still built around limitations that were within GNOME, but if you're more familiar with that GNOME 2 UX, it was more similar to what you knew. But now that it's been around for a long time, we have this weird amalgamation of GNOME technologies. Basically, we have something that is trying to emulate GNOME 2, built primarily with GTK3, but the applications are GTK4 with libadwaita. It is just a weird mix of tech. I don't know if I like it. If I could get rid of the corner rounding in GNOME, that would probably make it slightly less jarring, but this is something that still does exist that you can still use to this day. What about this Metacity thing though? So nowadays you know GNOME as using Mutter as its window manager, as its compositor. That wasn't always the case though. In the very early days of the project, it had another one. Actually, it was pretty common back then to be able to swap in different window managers. So there's actually a version of this that you can make use of with Compiz. Now, Compiz obviously has been out of development for a long time, so expect to see bugs on modern hardware and modern systems, but there is technically a way to use this with Compiz. If you're running this on Arch Linux, I believe that version is actually packaged just as is. But Metacity, this is the GNOME window manager before Mutter came along. But if you wanted to, there's no reason you couldn't use this with something like a DWM or an Awesome or a whatever window manager you happen to want to use. Trying to run this on Wayland, you probably could, but none of these components are intended to work on Wayland, so mileage may vary. Being built with X11, yes, it's going to have a lot of the X11 problems, but at the same time, it does have considerably lower system resources, so people do find that much older hardware than what you could reasonably run with modern GNOME still actually works totally fine on the X11 side. But nobody ever really talks about this today. Yeah, Flashback's still being worked on, development's not hyperactive, but enough where things continue working, things continue being changed, bugs are being fixed. But if it's around and, you know, it's still doing the whole GTK2 kind of look, the whole GNOME 2 kind of look, why does no one talk about it? Well, I can pinpoint two major reasons for this. One, most obviously, anyone who actually cared about that design has probably long since left the GNOME ecosystem, whether they went to something like a Mate or a window manager or anything else out there. Anyone who cared about that probably doesn't really care about GNOME anymore. Secondly, is an article from about 14 years ago now from Matthias Klassen, GNOME 3.7, What is Happening Now? So remember, it used to be called Fallback, not Flashback. Before Thanksgiving, I've caused some uproar and made people doubt our incurable stubbornness by first announcing the release team decision to drop fallback mode, and then that we are going to be looking at supported extensions as a replacement. Some have been calling this classic mode. I'm using the term legacy here, since classic may raise some false expectations. This GNOME Classic mode, or legacy mode, classic's actually the name it's going by now, this is something which is still being packaged to this day, and if you use GNOME, you very well may have this installed on your system and had absolutely no idea you did, or maybe you noticed it in your display manager, but never bothered to check it and never really knew what the thing actually was. So let's go back to the virtual machine and let us log out of this system. And if we go over to here, select this, we have another option, GNOME Classic. Now, never hack my super safe password for my virtual machines, and here we go. This looks a lot more like modern GNOME. We have the overview. All of this behaves like we would expect. We have a bar on the top and the bottom, and again, it doesn't look like modern GNOME, but it looks a lot more like modern GNOME. If you've installed a package called GNOME-shell-extensions, you very likely have this available. Typically, you install it to get access to a couple of the officially supported GNOME extensions, and it also includes the classic mode. So down the bottom in the left-hand corner, right-hand corner. Left-hand corner, we also have this here where we can actually see the windows we have open. In the right-hand corner, we have the workspace selector. In the top right here, like on regular GNOME, you have your shutdown and all of the other settings here. We have a calendar. As you can see, this is fitting a lot more in with the modern GNOME design. Up on the top left here, we have our places, we have our application selector, and then if we click this, takes us into the overview, again, like regular GNOME. What you're looking at here is just regular GNOME. This is just regular GNOME with a bunch of extensions installed to make it look more like things used to look a very long time ago. Of course, though, being regular GNOME, it doesn't have that kind of module customization that you would expect from GNOME Flashback, that you would expect from those really old versions of GNOME. At the same time, though, because this is modern GNOME, you do have access to all of the GNOME extensions, so arguably, you could say there is more customization because there's just a lot more third-party support than what you would get for GNOME Flashback. Technically, you can go and write your own modules, and people can make modules for it. It's just nobody ever actually talks about Flashback. Nobody even realizes Flashback is still around, so nobody actually goes and writes anything for it. Most of what's out there is probably from about 12 years ago. And to be extra clear, this is modern GNOME just with a bunch of extensions. If we go and run fast fetch, it is running Mutter Wayland, it is running GNOME 50.1. This is just regular old GNOME. Both these projects have a very similar goal. GNOME Flashback is trying to be that old style of GNOME, have the top bar, the bottom bar, have a lot of customization, be something which is more akin to what you were used to long time ago with GNOME, but it does it by being, yes, technically at one point an official part of GNOME, but nowadays still on the GNOME repos, but more like a third-party thing, which it's not blocking any changes, like releases aren't being blocked on it, it's kind of just off doing its own thing, and someone out there still probably uses it, but it's kind of just there. But if you want to have a version of GNOME that is much lighter to run, maybe give it a shot. If you want to use it, you can install it with GNOME-Session-Flashback. This is packaged on both Ubuntu, Arch Linux, and Debian. I don't think there's packages anywhere else, but there might be some third-party packages in various other places. And then GNOME Classic, this is just modern GNOME, but it's modern GNOME with a bunch of extensions installed that makes it more like older GNOME. So if you're kind of just happy with modern GNOME, you just want something that's a little bit more like to what you were used to a long time ago, this is also a solid option. Both of these do exist. You can try them both out and decide if you like one, or decide if you like neither and just don't bother with it. Honestly, I do kind of wish that GNOME talked at least a little bit about both of these options, because there are still people out there who like GNOME but wish things were like they were, you know, back in the old days. Obviously not with the theming, because that's just not going to happen, but having that user experience, having that panel layout that you were used to a long time ago, this would at the very least give those people something to focus on, something to use, and something which they could get involved in and help out in other aspects of the project. But let me know, have you ever used GNOME Flashback, or maybe you used it back when it was known as GNOME Fallback, back when it was actually something that people discussed, that people recommended, that people remembered actually existed? Or maybe you've used GNOME Classic. I would love to know, and if you have any thoughts on them, do let me know as well. The VM just went to sleep. Anyway, if you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well, and if you really liked the video and you want to become one of, forgot what my button was, these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, Daily Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and Flashback.